Hello and welcome everyone back to a guide to the Black Madonna with my beautiful co-host Martin. Um, I'm David. This is Martin. Martin, who are you?
So I'm a horror role-playing enthusiast, in particular of Cult Divinity Lost. Obviously, that's why we're here. I play some games online, um, and I am running the Black Madonna.
Fantastic. I'm David. I'm one of the admins from the Illusion Horror and Con, and we're glad that you're with us. And if you're not, then check out the Illusion Horror Con in December 5th to 7th. More information you can find on the illusionhorrorcon.events. Links are also in the description and everything. But yeah, we probably have the player submission currently open. So you can look up what is going on and sign up if you haven't done so yet, because I think you're missing out otherwise on a pretty fantastic weekend with panels, games, and many more things. But check it out on our website. Go now. Or later, after the episode. It's probably better. Anyway, we're both running the Black Madonna in parallel. I'm a bit further along than Martin here is, but I think that already established in a post episode discussions that we had that it actually helps us both nonetheless to reinterpret several aspects maybe and still even in the late campaign. I'm glad that I kind of had this exchange or have this exchange with you, Martin, to kind of create a bit more for my players. But before we go any further, any of the players who might accidentally click this link or play people who want to play this game at some point, stop now. Send over that link to your GM or Prosper GM, and tell them to watch this. Otherwise, you're gonna spoil yourself.
Yes, and our goal with this series is to support game masters who want to run the Black Madonna in Cult Divinity Lost, a system that is far more narrative driven than the original 90s version, which leaned quite heavily into combat. And we will talk about how to adapt a campaign, what challenges to expect, and how to bring the horror, history, and metaphysics to life.
Fantastic. One of the things that we cannot stress enough, the Black Madonna is a very dark campaign. It contains themes of trauma, harm to children, war, abuse, death, starvation, religious imagery, gore, body horror. Anything you expect in a classic Cult Divinity Lost campaign, but it is very dark. Make sure that you listen and view this in discretion, because we will try to cover as many topics as they are in the book, and we will try to highlight the advantages and disadvantages for them. So if something doesn't stick right with you, just stop listening or skip to the next section. Also, make sure that if you want to run this, ensure that your players also are okay with all of these.
And we also want to make clear that the podcast here is a fan project. So we are not officially affiliated with the Helmgast or the original authors of Cult. And we are simply sharing our own experiences, interpretations, and advice for running the Black Madonna in the Cult Divinity Lost rule set.
Exactly. Yeah. Last episode, episode 3, we talked a bit about the general outline of how the book is written, and we talked about the background, and we ended up in a quite already melancholic ending with the German autumn and how to prep players. But we've decided to make this a new section and a new episode, because I think there's just too much to put into the beginning of the campaign, and we don't want to just compress it down to a single thing. So Martin, after having flushed out maybe ideas already how to incorporate elements for the players and the campaign itself, how it interconnects, how it interweaves, I think we need to start where every good cult campaign should start, at session 0. And maybe talk a bit about the players and how to bring in the players. what what is a good start point to start here, Martin?
Yes, I having already listened to our list of content warnings here, I suppose a good place to start is the so-called horror contract in the Cult Divinity Lost core book, or a similar set of tools to have a structured conversation about what do you expect here, what themes are going to come up that could be problematic, what do we want and what do we not want in our campaign.
Mhm.
And maybe also talk a little bit about something we touched on in the previous episode. There is enough material in the Black Madonna to run several probably very different games or different versions of it. So maybe talk about expectations in terms of what do we want, like how do we want to play this? Do we want to play these combat heavy scenes that are in especially the latter part of the campaign, or do we want to focus more on character development? Not to say that you can't do both, obviously. Do you want a cohesive group of player characters who try to work together and more or less be okay with each other? Or do you want player character versus player character conflict? Lots of tension, lots of secrets, lots of backstabbing. Of course, there's middle ground between these two options, but I think those are probably really important expectations to set here, especially since you are going to spend a lot of time together playing
Certainly.
this campaign, because it is quite long.
It is. It definitely is long. Um, I think these are perfect points to start. Definitely establish a horror contract that everyone agrees to. Make sure that you're all aware of lines and veils from each other, um, and do not only try to maintain them, but like these are lines and veils for a reason. So make sure that you're not upsetting your fellow playmates, because if you want to play this campaign, which I suggest you do because it's fantastic and very, very, very great if you do it right. Um, you don't want to sour your relationships. And it also, I think one of the things that you should consider is definitely as you mentioned, the expectation as a GM. And when you establish that, I think be clear and be consistent. That's the most important thing. Um, Maintain a balance also of pacing. Don't rush. I suggest that this is one of the campaigns where you shouldn't rush through events. Let them breathe. Let them expand. Um, Honestly, I find it personally very hard to set how many sessions does this campaign need. Um, Initially, for my first or for the first run, I said about 20. Uh, Now surpassing 40, it's a bit, or close to 40. It's yeah, you do not know, and it's a very very difficult thing to establish, but it will be a long campaign, and just make that clear, because you want to play through it, hopefully. Um, Yeah, and then I think one of the things that sets this campaign also apart is the connections, because we last time established a bit of the background for our antagonists and our key hook for the campaign. Can you tell me a bit what the book provides in its state?
Yes, yes. So the book provides a modified version or some additions to the standard Cult Divinity Lost character creation process. We get a few archetypes, which I guess is what Cult calls character concepts that are suitable. I am sure that you could work some of the additional archetypes that are in the core book into the Black Madonna if you really wanted to. Um, but it would take a little bit extra work. The archetypes also come with some additional information, so we can get, for example, it is the veteran is an archetype. We get the veteran with a little suggested package that it is an ex-foreign legionnaire,
Legionnaire.
ex-foreign legionnaire. How is that so hard to pronounce?
Yeah.
Uh, we get an agent, also an archetype that could be then an ex-Stasi person, and so on. So we get a series of sort of suggested backgrounds that go with different archetypes and other elements that don't necessarily go with different archetypes that you can mix and match, which gives a lot of combinatorial possibilities of characters that are your standard Cult Divinity Lost characters, but are tailored to fit in with the time period and the themes, and are set up to have a lot of interesting character development and conflict.
Mhm.
We also get these relationship packages, suggestions for how they might relate to other people, such as being in an unhappy marriage, or being a loner with some trusted pet, and so on. And we get suggestions for relationships to Magda Orlova, the key non-player character for the first act. I really like these because they're very short, and
Yep.
they leave a lot of room for fleshing it out. But they come with, if you choose this one, if you had a relationship with Magda, then you probably met her in this time of her life. And that allows you, during the character creation, and you as a GM, to drip in little pieces of information and little pieces of connections to Magda that make her feel a lot more real, and make it feel like the characters actually do know her in some part of her life. And that also puts some constraints on, if you met Magda during a certain time, you must have been in East Germany or in East Berlin at a certain time. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
so
And
I think that's what we get.
yeah. And I think last time we flushed out also a bit the historic timetable of Magda from the beautiful summary page of the Four Destinies, which I think should be open during character creation, just to give you as a GM a bit more help and kind of organization to set everything up. Um, and yeah, as we mentioned in our content warning description, this campaign focuses significantly on children and harm to children, as it is the process also of their evolution throughout later maturity and adulthood. Um, the dark secrets about broken childhoods and mental illness. They are very strong connectors into the stories. Um, there's a clear idea here that the characters have some sort of. I feel like it always points to me, despite how I read this, it's not the happy family guy who, has a steady job and is working from 9 to 5 and comes home to his wife and 3 kids. It is cult, so it is a bit more, well, rough, right? The characters have been through some stuff already. They've experienced the changes that are happening around them. And they're trying to both deal with this maybe and if you already bring in maybe some form of kind of flashbacks or nightmares or something like that, then they might have even to process and deal with this. um, I find the list that you obviously are given in the book is to start with the dark secret, go through your occupation, um, choose your disadvantages and advantages, assign the core features, and then kind of flush out the character. Um, and I feel like it's always very difficult if you personally, for my players, often to assign statistics based upon the character concept that they created in their mind. And I'm not really sure what advantages, disadvantages should I take. Um, that's why I often like, especially since we're talking about a long campaign that you're going to play with a group of people for quite a while, to take the time and do like a one-on-one character concept with the players. Take the time to make a session with them and really use that concept that they flushed out and just do a bit of improv playtime. Give them an idea to describe their apartment. They wake up, what do they do, or where do they go? What is driving them? What is their motivation? Um, have you done that, Martin?
No, I did not do full one-on-one sessions. What I did was two things. So first, we had a joint character creation session, so session zero with.
Nice.
Well, we had some pre-game discussions already, but we had like a sort of workshop session where we all
Hmm.
went through the character creation process, and everyone talked with each other, brought ideas in from before, and so on. And when player was getting close to feeling feeling done with their character concept, I would take them aside. We would go into a different room and we would have our little chat. We didn't play anything, but I asked a bunch of questions. We talked about the answers, and I gave them some information that they would know about Magda and events related to Magda. I also talked through the relations, the non-player characters that they created around their character a little bit in that session.
Hmm.
And I think that worked relatively smoothly. Uh, except, except because I'm a massive genius, I forgot to write down the dramatic hooks that one of the players invented for their character, but that's a different story. Happens to the best of us, I
Indeed.
suppose. And then during the first few sessions, because to not have too long of a only one-on-one, because I would like the other players to be able to listen to what happens, but
Hmm.
without having a session uh, where three people are the audience and one is the player. I spread out flashbacks over several sessions. So the
Mm.
first session before getting to the banquet had a little bit more of you wake up in the morning and what's your apartment slash motorhome slash hotel room once you arrived in Hamburg like. But then the coming sessions had little Magda flashbacks in the beginning
Yeah.
where we spent just a couple of scenes back in the 1960s, waking up in Magda's apartment, or um, back in the 1980s, meeting her in a bookstore, and so on.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's a
So
nice way
that's my
to.
version of that, I suppose.
Yeah, no, no, I, I always, I'm torn because, like, on the one hand, I do like the group dynamics when you have character development and like established characters because often the characters can bring in so much more background. But I also love the reveal of like things that players want to hide from the others, and they really don't know things, and then you just trickle things in, and you see if you have players that can act this out, they kind of react accordingly. Man, what's going on with you? Um, it's very fun,
And
and yeah.
it is very fun, and that was part of our pre-game discussions, I guess. That so this in this game things are very very towards the open pole. So
Mhm.
they actually did know almost most of each other's. I mean, the players did know most of the other
Yeah.
player characters' dark secrets and backstories already from the start.
Okay.
And there is an agreement to keep player versus player conflict at a level where they are mostly a cohesive group. That is, of course, just I mean, one of many choices. I have certainly enjoyed other campaigns where there was some intense player character versus player character
Mm.
and secrets and so on. But I mean, for this format to work, you perhaps this session zero format probably works best if you have an open sort of an open game like that, and if you want to design secrets a little bit more. I guess we should have done that in the separate room, one on one, while the others
Hmm.
were workshopping in the other room.
Yep.
How did you do that part with the secrets and
I
hidden parts of
basically,
backstory?
yeah, I created kind of like a template of questionnaire for my players to fill out beforehand, and then basically use that as a starting off point. So um, I then did kind of little individual kind of sections and sessions with my characters, only with the kind of compiled information that I gathered, which primarily focus on the questions kind of given in the book, like what is your family? Who do you live with? Where do you live? But I also gave them kind of a background compendium where I kind of just summarized the main points of what to consider when creating a character for Black Madonna. And yeah, then during kind of the initial sections, it was like kind of touch base a bit, like letting the characters kind of develop first of all their kind of their persona, and then often enough, dark secrets are relatively easy to bring in everyday situations. So you can once I felt that they had a good grip of who they're playing and gave them a little kind of encounter here or a little kind of strange thing, creature coming in the corner of their eye or something, I then brought in kind of the dark secret to kind of see where this is going. What are they afraid of? And mostly also the trauma mechanism that they use to then compensate for that. So as much as the dark secret in itself is important, I find it more important like how do the players then react after having dealt with it? What is their coping mechanism? What do their characters then do to to calm down again because they're freaking out? And that often then led to understanding also better the characters' disadvantages, their kind of like issues in life, their what were the consequences. And as we mentioned in our previous episode, a bit about um the backstory that a year ago the antagonists have started to have nightmares, right? About the characters. Um, you can kind of already kind of incorporate kind of maybe strange moments of them acting out in public or something that could have been overseen or that is captured in a news clip or something. Um, it's often enough that very little things can be used to kind of trickle in later on strangeness, or if then they infiltrate Slava and they find photographs of them in those previous situations where they did something to compensate or reacted to something, and they find that it was captured by Blobel or somebody. It's very terrifying for them then to realize this, and especially the longer you go on, uh, I feel like the more the characters develop this natural, there is a natural PvP, I think, that will come with the campaign. I don't think you can 100% prevent this because players will make choices. And not all players will agree upon those choices, but these choices will have consequences that will potentially endanger the whole group, that will potentially expose them, that will have consequences. And so now, along the campaign that I'm running, they, two of them are terrified that the third will at some point not understand who's friend or foe, and they will be just killed because he doesn't know what reality is anymore. Not to say that they don't know what reality is, but like they are getting afraid of him, and they are starting to plan how do we prevent events to happen to us when the time comes, because he is just falling deeper into this like spiral of darkness. Um, that is his coping mechanism now. So like it started off as a simple little thing, and it has snowballed into this massive self-destructive and potentially endangering thing for everybody in the group. And now suddenly they are considering what to do about this.
And then you can look back to the first few sessions and think, how did it get this far? Uh, yes, this is a very real feature of the character development in cults that, yeah,
Yeah.
things tend to spiral.
What is your take on the family section? Because there is indeed kind of a section, almost like a page, just about tie-ins to families. Are you, as you mentioned, alone with a few friends, divorced, family died in an accident? How do you think these influence the later gameplay?
I think some of them probably influence the game more and probably fit the themes of the campaign better than others. One thing that is a concern, right, in a logistical sense, is that if you, because this falls in the 1990s globe-trotting epic campaign framework in a way, where you expect the player characters to go to well, go to Frankfurt under order to investigate an old hospital and then psychiatric clinic, and you expect them to travel to Moscow and St. Petersburg and so on, and leave their lives behind in a certain way. That you might end up creating a family of non-player characters and connections to them, and then not see them for the majority of the campaign. Um, Whereas there are others where you end up reinforcing the sort of with the tension in family. Cult families don't tend to be happy, really.
Yeah.
Or one of the player characters in our group has fleshed out a really awful background with abuse and revenge themes and so on,
Mm.
that fits the rest of the campaign all too well. I don't really need to do any work. The player has already done it for me there, and tying it into Chagidiel and so on. So I think some of these backgrounds very naturally lend them to the themes of the campaign, and others might be trickier, I think.
Hmm.
Perhaps.
No, no. I think that's a wise point, because especially the travel part, in a sense of setting the expectations too, like making sure the players understand they will need to travel throughout the campaign, and just at least giving them that much kind of information that they might be kind of gone for. I think the book suggests like, even if they have connections, they will need to travel to Hamburg for like a few weeks at least for the conference and so forth. Um, but yeah, it should be kind of made clear for the players to not invest, as you said, like 2 days to create their family and everything, and then they will barely interact with them. Not to say that it is not possible to still incorporate them. There are themes of revenge and people hunting the characters that can be utilizing those family members for very good reason. Um, and yeah, I think that's one of the things about the family things. As you mentioned, the cult families are never happy. Um, and that's why certain elements have like higher relationship value than others, so that when something happens to them, the consequence will be dire for the characters. The emotional stress that they experience is, I think, the thing that comes out of it.
Yes. I mean, mechanically, the cult relationships do those two things. Like
Yep,
they hurt you when they hurt your stability when something bad happens to the relation, and they improve your stability when you have an intimate moment with the relation.
exactly.
I guess again for logistical reasons and for story reasons, that's another part that the relationship NPCs that we create need to be accessible now and then in some way so that we can have scenes with them both for stability reasons and for story reasons, obviously.
Yep, yep.
And I think that creates a very when it works well, it creates a beautiful dynamic in all Cult Divinity Lost games where you bad things happen and you are incentivized to show some humanity and have a moment with the people who matter to you, even if that moment might sometimes be a bit strange, and that sort of in a way powers up your character to go out and face more adversity and so on.
Hmm. And I think I want to briefly go back, as we mentioned this in the previous episode a bit. Um, the backstory about, dark secrets and the individuals, um, the German autumn aspects of elements that should or could be considered in the beginning of the sessions can be tied in with the occupations of the characters as well. So as you mentioned, there's a veteran who's a foreign legionnaire. There's also a careerist or the former Stasi officer. Um, that potentially could have interacted with Anton Mahler, who, runs the Stasi or ran sections of the Stasi back then. Um, and that already kind of creates nice opportunities. And if you want, a perfect opportunity to highlight that in a one-on-one or even as a collaborative kind of interaction, it's harder in a collaborative because you can't really take the input of the others who don't know what you want to kind of put in there. Um, but I think that's a great moment to kind of already sprinkle kind of some information in there without them knowing. For example, one of my characters, um, she was living in a relationship that, or in a fam. She grew up in a family where she was kind of the second child. She was always mistreated, and her big sister was kind of the shining example for the family. And she was also mean to her, and she became very angry and upset, and so she met this guy, a nice young British gentleman, um, not knowing that it was Nigel Harcombe, but she started to kind of meet, or she met this young GI or something, and he began to teach her magic. And first, the concept, the law, kind of that, there's more to everything, and you can use that over the course of, repressed memory disadvantage, for example, or other elements throughout the story that you can bring up that conversation and pull always a bit from that and give more information easily to the players, up to the moment when there was the first confrontation with Nigel Harcombe later on in the campaign, and she just didn't know what to say. She just looked at him, and it was a great moment and role play moment because the other characters tried to attack him, and given the situation where they confront, and then she just couldn't move, and she was paralyzed, and they were suddenly concerned of her and what happened, and that moment was perfect. um, yeah, seeding kind of these little ideas already in the beginning and thinking about what part of the backstory do you want to bring in. I mean, a lot of this is the process of also the NPCs of dealing with trauma, of growing up with the really, really terrible experience they had as children themselves and became who they are? Um, or, is it kind of just a different aspect of the story? Do you want to focus it more on the higher powers of the good and bad? Although I find it hard to say that there's a good and a bad, and the
The
worst of
bad
two
and the
evils.
bad.
Um, yeah, I think these elements just like in the consideration of session zero when the players make the characters. If you want to bring connections in that you can later on use, um, that is something that's why it's helpful if you ideally send out a short questionnaire with questions specifically you want to know from the players that can help you build their characters with them, based on these suggestions.
I this the connections. I actually kind of wish that the book would make a little bit more of the customization. Some of us probably do this automatically, but I feel like as a we earlier we beginning cult GM, it would have been helpful if someone had told me you are allowed to change the written materials. You can go in and decide that this NPC that they have described this way is actually the same as this NPC that we created in the backstory, and that it's perhaps in fact something you should do. You should take the web of relations and the sort of threat map of the written material, and you should hook in your um, player characters pretty much every chance you get.
Hmm.
Um, I've not done it exactly the same way as you have, of course, but I have also used Nigel Harcombe a little bit. For example, we have a book dealer. Well, that's the occultist,
She is
and here
also a
is
book dealer in my case.
it's an obvious person, right? And in this case, the book dealer starts out by um, how the character, had this particular book about the quest for immortality that he really, really wants. He made out, and the player made an NPC for that. And what happens once the player character meets that NPC is that he, in turn, is looking for another rare book that he has a hard time finding. The latest one from Nigel Harcombe, who seem to have gone a little bit underground somewhere in Soviet, but perhaps our occult book dealer can help facilitate some kind of trade to get access to this book. And of course, my evil plan as the GM is that once this Harcombe book is found, the player character will look in it and see all the awful vivisection and rituals and so on that is described in there, as some kind of foreshadowing for once Harcombe shows
Hmm.
up. And so far, they are on track. They are trading books and so on.
Great.
Another one that I stole from the idea, I guess, from the Red Moon role playing's amazing run of the Black Madonna,
Hmm.
is Alexei Blobel, um, who is this um, in the first chapter, this agent of the Slavic Association that is watching our player characters and taking photos of them and being unpleasant and messing with their
Hmm.
lives. And I decided to make him the stalker of one of the characters who had chosen the
Oh, nice.
stalker disadvantage, a stalker connected to the background in Stasi, and therefore sort of Blobel's surveillance of the player character actually starts a little bit earlier in the backstory already compared to
Hmm.
where it's supposed to start in the first chapter, and so on. So not super dramatic things, but they hopefully make the connection between what's going on behind the scenes and the secrets that unravel a little bit more personal and a little bit more uh, pressing in some
Hmm.
ways. I hope.
What would you say are things to avoid, in kind of in the setup or maybe in the session zero in a sense of for the campaign.
The big thing that I would worry about, because I've made that mistake repeatedly in other situations, um, is to make dark secrets and I guess drives and dramatic hooks for characters that don't fit into the backstory of the Black Madonna, that risk feeling like distractions. I don't mean that every single dark secret has to lead back to Philip Kramer and to the Slavic Association or something like that, because that would be a bit too much. Not everything
Hmm.
needs to fit together, but that they are thematically connected in some way, or story-wise connected, so it feels cohesive.
Hmm.
And I can't really necessarily put my finger on what it feels cohesive means in practice, but I know the opposite when I see it, because I've managed to create it in several games where there is a plot, quote unquote, or something that the pre-written material wants the player characters to engage with, but the player characters, because of their dark secrets and their disadvantages, want to pull in a different direction, either thematically or story-wise. And that causes friction. That's yeah, and it's relatively easy to do that because the cult mechanics are powerful. They can pull characters towards their dark secrets and their disadvantages like it's nobody's business, and therefore those things need to align with what you want the game to be about.
Yep.
That's my
That's
big concern.
okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think also watching out a bit on the group dynamic in its total. That's why I like the questionnaires because I had some time after everybody had some time also to think about their concept ideas. Kind of, a couple of weeks before you send it in and you're like, oh yeah, maybe that change that or that. But you as a GM had time to kind of see, does it make sense to even bring those three together? Like, if you have one gun craving military guy kind of super into like everything hardcore and then like two academics, it can be quite challenging and to establish that kind of they need to work together. I mean, despite the initial hook and the disease, it will become potentially also like I don't want to say boring, but difficult to maintain always like yeah, okay, you're not going to do this now because we are trying to be, polite and social, and you're not just going to hit him in the face. Like, yeah. Um, I think watching out a bit on the dynamic, if you have such a strong dissonance, um, I think it would be helpful to kind of like then see if you can tie that character with another character together. Maybe they, met during uh, AA meetings or something like that. Um, that at least they have a connection to someone they trust and they can make a relationship before the game starts, just to ease that tension. And then you already have a dynamic that is established and it doesn't feel forced upon them. And that is very, very important because again, the characters will need to kind of abandon their lives, merge together as one, and do a lot of things. And if it feels forced, it might come wrong in a sense over to the players. So yeah, that would be my, I think, main consideration. What maybe to try to avoid is try to find a balance. If there is an imbalance, build it up and try to establish it amongst the players. How could they have known each other? Is there some way that you would be in connection with them, at least to not have these awkward moments?
Yes,
Um,
yes, that
yeah.
is a good point. I think Cult as a game, Cult Divinity Lost, has a relatively high tolerance for groups that don't necessarily work together as teams, and that where the characters split up and have their own scenes and uh, may not even have any intention of collaborating.
Hmm.
But the Black Madonna as a campaign probably has less. It needs a little bit of glue,
Hmm.
and really the more the better. Like if there are strong connections between player characters, and I don't necessarily mean strong as in that they are good. They could be strong but awful relationships between player characters.
Yep.
That is probably easier for everyone to work with, um, even if you want the player character versus player character. Well, then they need to hate each other or detest each other instead, right? They need to know each other regardless.
What do you think? Once the characters are established, they have their chemistry together. Is there anything else kind of they need or should be aware of? Horror contract is on the table and everything. What else do you think is kind of needed to kind of get the ball rolling?
I think this is something that perhaps every group needs to well, definitely every group needs to decide for them how comfortable they are, or how much they want to spend out of game doing homework,
Mm.
essentially. Are we all going to go watch the life of the others and read a bunch of Wikipedia articles and listen to playlists of what was on the hit lists from 1991 in Germany, or are we going to wing it mostly? I'm sure the golden paths are probably lies somewhere between, but maybe a little bit of background materials might be helpful,
Mhm.
for everyone involved. I guess what I'm saying is, as an absolute minimum, make a campaign playlist. Also because it's great fun.
It is great
Yeah.
fun. And I think one of the easy thing nowadays, especially with, internet and everything, just pick a couple of pictures, take some photographs of like Berlin in the 90s or just city streets in Germany in the 90s to just get an atmosphere that when you describe stuff or you have scenes in public, just lay out a photograph from back then, or if you have photos at home somewhere from the 90s, pull a couple of those out and put them on the table just to get like, oh yeah, we had this kind of fashion. I mean, now you see it coming back, but this kind of simple kind of yeah, visual kind of clue can definitely help. And yeah, for myself, I rely on audio clues significantly. So having kind of a good playlist or like a bit of kind of, oh right, that came out, and then it's like just in the background. And I occasionally do scenes when they kind of start a car that suddenly like the radio was on full blast and then a song plays. Um, yeah, that's certainly something. Regarding research, I think um, people or GMs can be often overwhelmed. This campaign in itself is already complex enough. I mean, we spent last episode, just going over the background, although we decided it might be just like a half a session or something. It is complex. It is information dense, and you can judge by yourself if you want to do more research. It is helpful to kind of give flavor and kind of atmosphere. Again, if you have the expectations of players, like I want to kind of feel the immersiveness, I want to know what is going on in a city, um, then certainly do a bit more research. But like, don't feel pressured that you need to know every historical events that happened during that time, because a lot happened on top of that. Historically, there's a lot of time of change that happened throughout. I mean, the campaign begins in September 91, and in October or December of 91, the Russian Soviet Union breaks apart. So that is a big event. And, you know, you can read whole books on these last 3 months of how the Soviet Union basically is starting to crumble. And if you do enough research, you can utilize all of this. But does it really bring a lot to the players when you know exactly every doctrine the Soviet Union passed in the last 3 months? Maybe, but not really. So I think as a GM preparation, I would say just have a bit of kind of realization where this is going, and yeah, a couple of photographs, a bit of music. I think that's all you need to kind of get the mood and get everybody's vibe in. And once they start kind of describing the scenes and their characters, usually you have a pretty good, solid foundation. What do you
Yes.
think? Do you have anything to add or?
And just so many photos of streets of Berlin. You can't have too many.
Exactly. I think then that leads a bit to kind of okay, we have our group together. We have the music is playing, maybe you have a couple of pictures on the table. Where do you start even with this campaign?
The easy answer is that you start by handing out invitations to the German Authors Association's Golden Plaque Dinner. At least that's what the campaign book suggests. That is sort of the first scene
Mhm.
that we get, and that is more or less where we started. We did a little bit of how do you get there, what happens before, why are you at a banquet, but we really started with the golden plaque dinner.
So you started right away at the dinner itself or the evening?
Yes, yes. Or we treated the previous sort of scenes as um, flashbacks, I guess, or
Hmm. Shots, okay.
establishment. And then about perhaps halfway into the first session, we started with the with the dinner.
Okay. Um, yeah. That is exactly a good point because yeah, that begins the official campaign but I think one of the things that um I just flipping through the book as well. Following the tips for the game master, there is a summary of all the chapters and kind of their connection. I think it's a condensed summary section of what is happening. So I think that is also good to kind of refresh as a GM before the start of the campaign. Um, and then there's also the timeline for the parasite, the initial infection that then in the first session or throughout the campaign becomes clear. I think for that, it is definitely helpful to have that on a overview sheet that you have somewhere that you can where you maybe tick off the days as you play along and kind of just go down a list. I mean, nowadays you can just make a table on a computer with like tick boxes and then, oh, we're now here. So month is done or day is done, and we go to the next session. So I think from a GM perspective, that should cover pretty much the session zero, right?
Yes, yes. I think we are. And I guess that is another matter of style. How much when you prep, I know people do this differently. To what extent they actually run things from the campaign book, or if they
Mhm.
just go through reworking everything down to their own notes. I fall somewhere in between here. I always have a session sheet with my bullet points for what I think makes sense, could happen now, and things I should remember during the session, and you know um, how much hold there is for different disadvantages and so on
Mhm.
that I keep on one side. And then I do actually flip through the book for certain things. I have not gone through the trouble of boiling down every description in my own words and so on.
Okay.
Um, but I think that's very much a matter of style, because
Yep.
I've certainly heard from people who never open sort of never open the written scenario during the session. They have everything in their own writing or in their own heads, which I find quite impressive. Um,
Touche. That is indeed a magnificent task, especially in this campaign. When the players suddenly ask about a connection that happened and they do a research that you didn't anticipate, and you suddenly need to flip through and find the appropriate section. Um, oh, that actually brings me to a point that in preparation for session zero, um, I think is a bit underrated, but it is, I think, a good point to just have it read definitely once before is the NPC section of the campaign book. I did the mistake and I didn't fully read through it because I was anticipating a lot of that would come naturally. I mean, if a doctor at a mental hospital would be a doctor of the mental hospital, then I can kind of flush out maybe some details. I can read the abstract above it. But I just want to say, as we might come back to that point later in episodes, do take the time and read through the NPC section because you will definitely kind of find a bit of a um, uh, different take maybe on one or the other characters and understand their motivation a bit more. Just to be absolutely clear when you start the campaign that you don't set things up as um, with a different angle that you try to remedy later on. But when it comes to NPCs, as a preparation, also um, prepare just a list of names that you have ready, because there's nothing worse than when you name everybody Otto or Michael or Sven or whatever. Um, just look up a couple of names from that were common in the 90s and have at least 10, male, female names ready that you can reuse with a couple of last names. And it just helps significantly to kind of drive the story without looking a lot of things up during the game. Um,
yes, yes, yes. That is a great point. And I also have my list of like 20 random German names, and I try to make them a little bit odd as well, so that they don't overlap too much with between each other or with names that we grab out of thin air or that are in the campaign book, and so they're a little bit distinct. And then I sort
yeah.
of just check them off and write, okay, so this is a book dealer, this is a taxi driver, this is one of the authors of one of the occult tomes from the Slavic Association. It's like, check.
Yep.
Yes, very names worst part of GMing.
Exactly. Um, and I think from my perspective, because I'm terrible in keeping notes or making notes during a game when I run a game, um, ask your players if they're okay, for example, if you can record the session, if you have, computers around or, tape recorder, ideally, that would be crazy. But
Reel to reel.
exactly, I tend to run most of my games online, so like there are tools that you can use online to record your sessions, which if your players are okay with this, can help you so much, especially if you longer breaks or there's delay or you whatever happens. Um, there's nothing better than if you half an hour before your session begins, the next session begins, you just sit down and listen to the last 15 minutes of last session as a GM, and you can just continue to play in that mindset, and you can just kind of pick up exactly where you left off, which can be sometimes frightening for the players because they're like, oh, fuck, yes, that happened, and what's going on? And it just helps for myself to keep notes and track things much easier because I can just make notes. Important thing happened about an hour in this session. So like later on, I just have a reference of like time codes, and I can go back and like, yeah, okay, something happened there. Also, it is very terrifying if you can use audio clips if you want to invest that much time, but to use audio clips of your players and then play them back later a bit distorted or something when they call somebody and they are dreaming or something, it is very weird and fun. how do you keep track of what happens?
It's interesting because I represent the low tech solution here. In this case, in many cases probably. I use pen and paper, and I write notes on loose leaf while running the session, and then I number those and carry them around in a folder with me. And that would be an amazing system if my handwriting were legible, which it often isn't. It would also help if I were good at prioritizing what I wrote down and not. But I do occasionally write down notes that when I manage to decipher them, I look back at them and go, what? It's often funny quotes that the player characters have said in some context. No, but joking aside, it works reasonably well. I don't go back and read all these notes because it's like 2 to 3 full pages per session. But I do extract some of the key impressions after the sessions. And if you happen to be on the Cult Elysium Discord, you can go and read some session notes in the play report channel. They are not full session notes by any means, but they are some of my impressions of some of the sessions. It's not all of it is there, but that actually helps jog my memory a little bit. And I know there are some people there who at least are also running or have run the Black Madonna who I enjoyed reading their session notes, so I hope that they enjoy reading mine. They sometimes put some happy emojis on them at least, so whether that means they read it or if they just acknowledge that there's someone else running the Black Madonna, who knows.
Fantastic. I think one GM, if he's even more old school or lazier than that, could just ask to let the players write a little diary or journal entry after each session, which doesn't have to be long, but captures basically the perspective of the players, and can, if you combine them at the end, be a nice kind of pathway of their own destruction, as you can then hand them back like, do you remember when you wrote this? Like, this was you. Especially if they're academics or they journal as players as well. They might flip through it and then they read their old kind of. I just went to Hamburg for a weekend, and now I'm somewhere in Moscow in a shady apartment, and there's people outside. I don't know what the fuck went wrong. That can be very fantastic too. So yeah, if you don't want to write yourself, then ask the players if they want to write a short journal entry that you can then also use as a refresher, or a communal journal where each week somebody else writes kind of their interpretation, and then you have also a very, I think, very emotional and very heartfelt kind of memory that you can then replicate for the players, and then everybody has a copy of their fantastic campaign of the Black Madonna.
If you do physical handouts, like in this case, like I'm running this in person, a collection of handouts has a little bit the same function.
Exactly.
Already now, when we have maps of locations of the Slavic Association and so on, if you look over at the folder where these things are stored, the first thing there is the invitation to the German Authors Association's Golden Plaque dinner, and that's going to be there when they are going to hell and back, in chapter 6, I suppose. It's a reminder of the humble beginnings of the story.
And I think with this beautiful invitation and the segue to the Killer's Dance, I think we'll end tonight and dedicate a whole session, an episode to the Killer's Dance, because I think there's a bit too much to unpack in just the little time we have left today.
The chapter really deserves it, so
Absolutely.
I'm sure we can talk about that a lot.
So yeah, thank you again, Martin, for episode three
You.
of A Guide to the Black Madonna. Um, where can people find you if they have further question?
Best place, probably the Illusion Horror and Con Discord and the Cult Elysium Discord. All the culty discords. I don't know if that's all. There are probably more culty discords. If you know of other culty discords that I should be on, send me a message and I might join if I'm allowed to.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm David. I'm one of the admins from the Illusion HorrorCon. That is happening December 5th to 7th. If you have nothing else going on, look it up, join us. All the information you can find in the links below or on our website, delusionhorrorcon.events. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you like what you've heard, if you got inspired, if you feel you have questions that we didn't answer, please send them to us. We're happy to get feedback to understand what it is that you want to hear, that we maybe need to flush out more, or that you didn't understand the way that we described it, because maybe we didn't either. Let us know and share your ideas and comments, and we're happy to get back to you. Thank you very much. See you the next time.